All righty, what is up, guys? We're back with another episode today on the Tori Cruz Show. I have a super special guest. I mean, I know I always say that, but this time it's really special because we have a Hawkeye fan in the house. So I'm just gonna tell you right now, this is really awesome to get reconnected with colleagues that you've met way back in college and then now reconnected in your career path. And so today we have on the show Jordan Montgomery. He's the owner of Montgomery Companies. He's a performance coach. He's a keynote speaker. He's a present father, a present husband. He's a business executive. And he is from small town Iowa, just like yours truly right here, different small towns.
Come on.
But always just love connecting with other like-minded people. And Jordan's just an amazing, transparent speaker and coach and human. And so welcome, Jordan. I'm super excited that you're here and ready to have an awesome chat too.
Tori, thank you for having me. I gotta say, it's been so fun to watch your life and your business and your journey evolve. Because you go back to college days and knowing you at a different point in life, and I was certainly at a different point in life. But it's cool to watch friends evolve and grow. And obviously, you are running a first-class business and having a ton of impact. So proud of you. Thankful that we've stayed connected, and certainly honored to be on your show today.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It is awesome. And thanks to social media for keeping us connected, right? Because we get to see each other's journeys unfold. And it is crazy to think, I don't even know, I'll say 10 years. I'm not going to do the math right now, but let's just say 10 years ago, 10 years ago, the transformation that, going from college to now business owners. And, we were talking a little bit off camera here, how when I knew you too, you were with Northwestern. And I just want you to describe really your journey let's start from after college to kind of that career path of how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll give you sort of the short version or the shortest version that I could give and just share with the listeners, what that looked like. But I graduated college 2009 from the University of Iowa. And right away, I wanted to just own my own business, Tori. So I thought, I just want to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to work for anybody else, but I had two major issues. I had zero capital and I had no experience or knowledge. So I found Northwestern Mutual and I really created an opportunity where I could be in business for myself and not by myself. So financial services was great for me because I still got to feel like I was an entrepreneur. I was still autonomous in terms of how I ran my schedule. But at the end of the day, I didn't have to bring any money to the table to start it. So I had a great run with Northwestern for the first 3 years. I just worked with clients. So I just did individual planning. In year 3, I began to run an office. And then a couple years after that, I put on a third hat, which was more of like a consulting hat for the company. So I'd fly to different organizations and I'd speak and coach. That's really where I fell in love with the work of speaking and coaching. Oh. And then at 27 years old, so April 1st, 2015, was probably the hardest day of my life. I got a call from my managing partner. And he said, I need to see you right away. And, it's interesting to set the stage for this conversation I was about to have. At 27 years old, I thought I was living in like the proverbial penthouse, and you knew me back then. So you kind of remember like this guy that was moving too fast, that had a lot of pride and ego. And really my identity was in my bank account. It was in my success. It was in my achievement. It was in my social network. And I don't think God caused it to happen, but I think he allowed it. At 27 years old, all of that changed. So my managing partner at the time calls me into his office. I was so naive. I remember being upset that I had to have the conversation. Like I was busy, and I'm like, gosh, this is getting in the way of some of my other meetings. And he looked at me and he said, Jordan, I still love you. You haven't done anything malicious or intentional, but today will be your last day with our firm. And what had happened was somebody on my team had taken a test. They took an internal assessment. And in that industry, it's grounds for termination. So even though it felt like to me it was a minute infraction, he had the right to make that decision. And so he made the decision to let me go. And at the time, I was involved in some real estate deals. So it gets even worse. Not only did I get let go, but I lost a lot financially. The bank called the loans. All the loans went sideways. And literally within about 30 days, Tori, I went from like the proverbial penthouse to the outhouse. A company-wide email went out with just my termination because I had done so much work inside the company. And it was just really a devastating time. Like, I just remember feeling ashamed, embarrassed, insecure. For 2 years, I kind of went into this like desert season. I got recontracted with Northwestern, so I stayed with the company, but I moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I attempted to rebuild that business. And if you know anything about the financial services business, it's hard enough to build once. I had to go build it again, like making cold calls in an office in a town where I didn't really know anybody. But it was in that season where I met Ashley, who is my now wife, and she had 2 children, Audrey and Claire. And there is no way, if I didn't go through what I had went through and God didn't deal with my pride and my ego, there's just no way I would have been ready to step into their lives and to become a husband and a father. So again, I don't think God caused it, but I think he allowed me to go through it. And there's this quote that I love, that sometimes God's preparation for your life is packaged as pain. And I know so many of us can relate to that. You go through something really difficult and it sucks and it hurts and you wish you didn't have to go through it. But on the other side of that, there's a plan and there's something special waiting for you. So I got married to Ashley. We had 2 children, just had our third 2.5 years ago, Olivia. We started a consulting business. God's opened doors. Northwestern actually became one of our largest clients. And we haven't looked back, but it was a unique transition from financial services to the coaching and consulting work that we do now. And while I didn't enjoy every day of the journey, I look back and I'm grateful for it. So that's the story.
Wow. There's like so many little nuggets in there that I want to pull out, but no, it's super, super inspiring, number one. And like this, thanks for your vulnerability as well, when it comes to, back when you were 27 and it was like pride and ego and your identity was wrapped up in really probably the dollar signs, right? Of what cause you're very successful at a young age. And so just like having that vulnerability, because I think that really preaches to a lot of people who are successful younger. And it's like, at the end of the day, Jordan, like, would you even say it was worth it? Or is the life that and I think I know this answer, or is it life that you live now where you have so much more freedom and love and really, you have your wife and your kids, like that difference? Looking back now, what would you tell your 27-year-old self who was like wrapped up in all of that?
Yeah, I think when you're young and you're maybe a little bit naive, oftentimes experience has to be your teacher. Like, I think really smart people try to learn from other people's mistakes and like what they go through. And then there's sort of like the average people, and I was average. I think I had to learn from my own experience. Like, I think I had to go through it to get to the other side. And, pride and ego are interesting because you don't always know that you have them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like the really annoying person. Like, they don't know that they're annoying, which is what makes them annoying. And the same thing with a really prideful person. Like, they don't know that they're prideful, which is part of what makes them prideful. So there was just so much that I didn't know at 27. And I think I got some gifts, and the gifts of awareness and understanding, peace and contentment, certainly relationship with Ashley and our girls, but totally worth it. Totally worth it. I again, like, I didn't enjoy every day of the journey, but I can look back and say, so thankful that I went through it, and that I'm at where I'm at today. So thankful for it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And something that you said there as well is sometimes to find your purpose, you have to go through your pain. And sometimes that biggest pain is really what creates your purpose as well. And going through those dark times, it's like, man, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and God's going to show you the way and show you the path. But just navigating through those waters, I had that same thing with relationships where it was dark, it was bad, it was something, but I had to navigate. I had to go through that in order to find something amazing a few years later. And you just never know where that time comes. And so describe how you really like spoke to yourself, or those times where you were really down and depressed and you got terminated from your career and you had to make that shift. How did you get through those times?
Well, number one, my faith became a lot more real to me. There's that old adage about, like, you don't know that God is all you need until He's all that you have. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot more than the Lord. Like, I had great family around me, tons of good friendships. I still had my health. Things really start to fall in perspective, when you're broken. You start to become grateful for things that you used to take for granted.
Yeah.
And so I've always said that brokenness is a powerful position, because maybe for the first time you're willing to listen to others, or to pray. And for me, like, it was one of the first times in a long time that I had opened my Bible and I got back to reading scripture. So there were some things that happened in my life, Tori, that like I started to do again, or I did for the first time. Um, but I would say my quiet time with God, leaning into the relationships with my family, and understanding also the gift of friendship. Because when something like that gets taken away from you, you start to realize how many of your friendships weren't real friendships. Like, maybe they were friends with you because you offered them something, or you kind of ran in a similar circle. But like, when you go through something really difficult, you find out who your real friends are. So I think it was real friends, it was family, and certainly it was my faith, and quiet time just with me and God, nobody else, and I learned a lot in that season.
Yeah, most definitely. So then you went to Minnesota, and how did you know that time when it was time to pivot and start your own business? Because you wanted to, how many years before that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and start your own. So like, how did you know it was time to start Montgomery Companies?
So here's what's interesting about time, right? Like, we all want things to happen in our own timing, and it just never seems to work that way, right? Like, whether it's a relationship or a job or a certain opportunity. And I remember, Tori, being in that season where, so I had gotten fired. I was back with the same company, but I'm in Minnesota. And I remember being like 3 or 4 months in, and I'm like, okay, God, like, I'm ready for you to show me why I went through this. And there was like no signs. And then I remember a few months after that, and I'm like, okay, God, like, I'm ready. Like, I think I've learned the lesson. Like, I'm ready to like be restored and redeemed. Like, show me why I went through it. And there were no signs. And there was little signs, but there wasn't like the big earth shattering, like, here's why I took you through it. And I think we want to see that. Like, I think all of us as humans, we have a tendency to really want to know, like, why did I go through this? And I actually didn't learn that until about 2 years later. And actually, I don't know that we're ever promised that. I think we want to know those things, and we want to feel like we're promised that. Like, I want to know, I need this to make sense. And my thing eventually made sense because I met Ashley, and we got married, and the girls. And so like, I can put those pieces together now. But for a long time, it didn't make sense. And so for somebody that's maybe listening and maybe is hurting or going through something right now, I just say, like, know that your timing is different than God's timing. There is a plan and a purpose. And if you stay the course and keep your head down and take it one day at a time, we always say next 12 hours. So focus on the 12 hours in front of your face. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not promised. All you have is today. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and joy comes in the morning. But gosh, God's timing is so different than our timing. That's what I believe.
Yeah. It's, and it's not always easy, right? Like, it just, especially when you're super, it's like, I've never been that type of person where it's just like, all right, sit there and pray about it and just wait. And I don't really peg you as that sort of person either. Like,
no.
You pray, but then it's like action, right?
Yes. Yeah. Like, I would pray and I'd be like, okay, but now it's time to fix it.
Right.
Like, I got to go do something. So I struggle with that, Tori. Like, I really struggled that I didn't have more control, So that was a challenge. I'm sure you felt that in your life at different times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it still is one of those things, right? Because I think at every different season of your life that we go through, there's always something more that you want. It's like, be happy in the present, be happy what you have, be grateful, be thankful. But then there's always something we're striving after, right? That keeps us going. And so when you pray for that, and then it's like, all right, like, how long am I going to have to wait for this? How long am I going to have to wait for this relationship, or this next career adjustment, or this next whatever it is? And so it happens all the time.
I heard something yesterday. This is so good, that most people suffer from destination addiction. Like, I'm addicted to being at the next step, or the next chapter. And that was me. Like, I had become addicted. I had a destination addiction. I just wanted the next thing, right? Whether it was the the next level of income or the next house or the next car. And then even in my suffering, even in my brokenness, I was like, okay, I want to get to the next chapter, like get me out of this. But I don't know, Tori, I just think for me, I think for most people, I think brokenness is a powerful position. It's where we learn, it's where we grow. And God uses it, I don't know why it has to work like that, but it does.
Yeah, I love that. Brokenness is a powerful position. That's really good, because I feel like that's the part where a lot of people kind of hang in and they're like, damn, I hate being broken. Like, I hate this place that I'm in. But if you view it as more power instead of like broken and depression, and like, man, this is an exciting time because you're in such a place and time where you can excel and move forward, and use your gifts and your talents more through that brokenness. I think that's really where it lies. So brokenness is a powerful position. I like that. That might just be the title of this podcast. I'm just throwing that out there right now.
Let it happen. I love it. It's great. Yeah.
Another thing that we were kind of talking about here before we got started is just like, a lot of people right now are just with social media, I feel like, is really what the bottom line is, but is they're portraying that everything is figured out, like their life is perfect, like have the great family and have the great career, have, a beautiful home, have nice cars, like have it all figured out. But I feel like that's just not true. There's, even you who looks like everything is amazing on the outside. And for me, social media, I try to be vulnerable as much as I possibly can, but like also people probably look at my life and are like, wow, you have it all figured out. And off camera, I'm like, hey man, I'm going through a transition right now with my business from, being in my, 3 to 4 years right here of figuring out what I like, what I don't, what I'm good at, what I'm bad at. And like, what would you have to say about that? Where it's just like, your life looks awesome. You're very successful. You have a beautiful family. You have a beautiful wife. Like, you got it all going on. But what would you say to people who are just like, dang, it looks like you got it all figured out right now? What would you say to that person?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking the question, because I think right now there's a real gap in human connection. Like what keeps people connected and what actually creates connection. And it's what you just described, Tori. And I would say it like this, like vulnerability is the first thing I look for in you. And it's the last thing I want you to see in me. Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm testing for your authenticity, right? We test each other's authenticity all the time. Subconsciously, I'm thinking like, can I trust this person? What are their values? What's their angle? And I would assume that if I'm speaking with a group or a person, they're asking those same questions about me. So it's interesting, like that's our first instinct with others. Yet it's the last thing we want anybody to know about us. It's the first thing I look for in you, and it's the last thing I want you to see in me. So it creates this gap, right? And we live in this artificial world where people don't really feel connected, and leaders struggle to connect, and people struggle to connect because they're busy acting like they've got it all figured out. So I think part of the way that we close that gap is in the right way, to put our weakness on display and show who we really are. There's a wrong way to do that. But if it's done in the right way, I think it actually creates real human connection. There's this idea that vulnerability begets vulnerability. If I'm vulnerable with you, you'll be vulnerable with me. And I know, like in my journey with my story, the minute I decided to own my story and talk about what I had really been through, because if you met me 5 years ago, I would have struggled to say what I just said, right? I'd be like, well, I kind of moved on, and then I kind of got back with the company. Like I would have given you some other version of what really happened. Brene Brown says it like this: when you own the story, when you deny the story, it defines you. When you own the story, you can write a brand new ending. And I was set free. Like when I owned that story, I was set free. And not only was I set free, I could start connecting with other people in a real way. And it just, everything changed. My peace, my contentment, my relationships, our business, like opportunities went through the roof the minute I was like, hey, I kind of suck. I made some mistakes. Here's some things that I did that I'm not, like it was hard. And all of a sudden, like everything changed. And so I think the challenge then is to, okay, well, how do you continue to be vulnerable in the right way and let people know, like, I don't have it figured out. There's a lot that is not going well in my life. Now there's a lot that's going really well, but we're super grateful for. I'll let you in on this. So last night, I I don't know why I got sick. Like I had a fever, and I sweat the bed so bad. My wife had to wake up this morning, throw all my sheets and all our comforters in the washer. Like our kids were like, "What's wrong with dad?" Like I felt like crap all day. I've had a bowl next to me all day. Yet I've been on 3 podcasts today. Nobody knows that. But like actually, the last 24 hours was just a complete and total wreck. So we're all living in this weird sort of reality where things aren't perfect and they're not going well, but we often portray to the outside world that it's great. And so I want to continue to be somebody who stays real and stays authentic and in the right way can share parts of our life or our journey that aren't altogether perfect. Because when we do that, I think we level set with people, we build real connection, and it's also the very thing that sets us free and gives us peace and contentment. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you would agree with that, but I believe that to be true.
Right. No, I completely resonate with that. I couldn't agree anymore. It's crazy when you become vulnerable and you start to share what, like you said, those weaknesses, how many more people gravitate towards you and how many more people come up and be like, man, you are so genuine or authentic and real. Like I wasn't expecting that, and then, that's from a stage perspective, but then from, let's say even social media or just having a conversation like this, it just by you sharing that story right there, I guarantee a lot of people's guard just straight like went down because you have a really cool bio and you're awesome. But then I bet some people's guard just went down just by being a real human. And so I think that's just really, really important. And on that note, also when it comes to business relationships, that's something that even myself, I struggle with a little bit as a, still I would say a new entrepreneur, is with different business relationships, client relationships, or, companies. How do you bridge that gap? Because there has to be that level of respect, right? When you're having a business relationship, but you also want to be real and genuine and authentic and vulnerable, all those things too, but also keep that respect. And for me personally, I'll be real, like that's been a hard juggle because I'm just like, hey girl, what's up? Like, what, I would love to help you. Like, but then sometimes I think like, oh, she's more of a friend than she is, a mentor. So what would you say is that healthy balance between vulnerable and real and genuine, but also professional?
Yeah, that is such a good question. So I'm going to go at this like 2 different ways, because I think there's like the stuff that we go through that's really big and heavy, like macro life stuff, like we just talked about. And then I think there's just like the day-to-day interactions, right? Like how do I just continue to be authentic when I relate to people day to day?
Yeah.
On the big heavy stuff, like the macro stuff, I think there's a wrong way to do that. I think if we try to share stuff maybe too soon or too quickly, like if we're not really over something and it's still affecting our identity in a significant way, it might not be the right time to share that.
Yeah.
And I'm a big Brene Brown fan, so I'm going to quote her again. But she says, when you're ready to share your story because it no longer affects your current identity. So in other words, I can talk about what I went through now because it doesn't make me insecure. It doesn't affect me. It's not difficult for me really at all. But it used to be something I couldn't even talk about. So for somebody like, again, the macro thing is if you're on the other side of it and you're at peace with what happened, then share it, talk about it because it's going to be encouraging to somebody else. On the day-to-day side of things, here's what I think about. This quote is on my mind all the time. Craig Rochelle says, and I know that you are a Craig fan. He says this, that people can be impressed with your strengths, but they connect to you through your weakness. So again, if you really want to lead people, connect with people, have real relationships, I think it's finding ways to put your weakness on display. And it doesn't need to be like, well, I'm bad at this, or this is a major issue that I'm dealing with. It could be little things like we coach leaders on powerful catchphrases that demonstrate vulnerability. So one would be, I don't know. That's a powerful sentence. And it's powerful because it trust and credibility multiplier. If you ask me a question and I don't know, rather than trying to act like I've got it figured out, if I say, you know what, Tori, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. And it's not that the answer is not important. It's like, let's go figure it out together. There's something really actually attractive about that. When somebody's willing to say, I don't have the answers, or I don't know the answer to that. It's been said you should never trust a financial advisor who can't use the words, I don't know. And I'm like, you should never trust another leader that can't say, I don't know. Right. Or like, it's my fault. That would be another one. Like, gosh, my bad. It's my fault. There's vulnerability in that. Like your willingness to own, like, that was my fault, especially when it's not a big deal. So if you do something and it hurts someone and it's like a big deal, owning that is called being a good human. Right. But if you do something small and owning it is called being a good leader. Like if I showed up 5 minutes late or 7 minutes late to this call, when I was 2 minutes late, so I couldn't figure out the passcode, I could say, Tori, my bad, busy day, sorry, 7 minutes late. What's up? How are you? Or I could say, Tori, like, I didn't honor your time today. I'm 7 minutes late, and I just want to own that. I am so sorry for being late. Thanks to the grace. Just want you to know that I know that's a big deal because you're really busy. Like, that's owning a small thing that shows vulnerability, that builds human connection. So that's a really long-winded answer to a pretty short question. But those are little things that we think about that allow people to keep it real and stay vulnerable in day-to-day conversation.
I love that. One thing that just super, like, it really resonates is owning up to just that last little bit that you were just saying there, is like owning up to your faults or mistakes, or even a timely thing. I'll be the first to admit, if I meet one of my friends for a coffee meeting, man, I'm trying to get better at the time, but
me too. Guilty.
I'm trying my best. I'm like, girl, I tried to get here as quick as I could. I don't know what happened. I swear I cushioned like 20 minutes this time. I don't know.
I'm with you. So guilty.
I'm trying to do better with that, but speaking engagement, I'm there like an hour and a half, 2 hours early sometimes, just to like make sure like my head's in the game and it's where it's at. But what you just, what was that? Oh, I think we froze up here for a second. Are you there?
Did we?
Oh, there we go.
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Ashley calls me a time optimist. Like, she says, I always think I have more time than I do. She's like, you're not trying to be disrespectful. You just think you have like time for one more phone call or, one more text message. And so I kind of like that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a time optimist. Like, I'm not a jerk. I'm just being too optimistic with my time.
Right. You don't want to.
Maybe that's you.
I'm totally stealing that. So you can tell Ashley.
You're a time optimist. Yeah.
It's so true. Just you saying that reminds me of your Instagram videos of your daughters that are like mocking you, like, this is what dad does, or this is what dad says. Those are hilarious. You guys listening, if you have not checked out, Jordan, what's your Instagram? They have to go check these out. They're priceless.
It is Jordan M. Montgomery. So,
all right.
Yeah, there's something else.
Oh, they're so cute. But so back to what we were kind of saying, totally love the time optimist, stealing that for sure. But that what you just said resonated so much, because I'm not kidding you. Right before we just filmed this podcast, I was on the phone with somebody who I was looking at for different speaking programs and things. And it was definitely a sales call. And he called 10 minutes after our scheduled time. And I was like, but didn't apologize when, or say like, hey, I'm really sorry for the late. It was 10 minutes later. And I just thought of that. And I was like, after we got off the phone, I just thought like, wow, like that was kind of unbelievable. Like it just immediately rubbed me the wrong way. And I think it's also a sales tactic for some companies, which I scratch that, please, if that's part of your sales. but it was just like,
isn't that crazy?
Yes,
like,
it was nuts.
Actually, like there's a thing in certain organizations where like keeping somebody in the lobby, like if somebody shows up, it's like, we'll make them sit there for 5 or 10 minutes. Like to demonstrate that we're busy and, right. We get a lot of people trying to see us today. And it's like, that is so off-putting. Like, when has that ever worked for anybody? I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, I think honoring people's time and letting them know like, hey, you're important to me, whether we know each other well or not at all, like you're on my calendar, we have a meeting for a reason. I'm going to try to honor your time because I want people to do that for me, So
right.
Anyway, that's you could do a whole like 1 hour talk on that.
Oh my gosh.
The Time Optimist with Tori Cruz.
Time Optimist. I'll do that one right after we're done here. I'll film that.
There you
one.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep it rolling.
On that. Yeah. That's good.
So something I want to dive into is really the part of starting your business, because there's a lot of listeners here that are really starting their personal brands and also, new business owners. So I really want to focus on where for you was it like, how did you know what you wanted to do when you branched off and started your company? Like, how did you know? Because you have a lot of different talents, you have a lot of different wisdom, especially with, personal development, mindset, leadership, culture, corporations, family life, like all these different things. How did you know two different things, like who your ideal client would be, and how did you know what route you wanted to go down when you had the choice, right, to start whatever sort of business you wanted to start?
Well, here's what's funny about that, Tori, and I don't know if you would agree with this. First off, I would say this: we're still figuring that out. Like, I think there's a tendency to act like, oh, I've got it all figured out. Like, this is what we do. This is who we are. Like, these are our clients. And for sure, that's been defined, right? Like, I could tell you, these are the people we work with. This is what I think we're really good at. This is where we have some work to do. But I'm now thinking about, what's the next step? What's the next chapter? Like, we have more that we want to do. So we're always trying to figure that out. I think there's got to be two sides to that. There's got to be like, this is who we are, understand who I am and who we are. But I also am really growing and I'm trying to get better. And so I'm still working on what's the next chapter. When I made the pivot from financial planning to do what we do now, I remember having a conversation with a mentor, and I said, Dave, his name is Dave. I said, Dave, I hope this was the right decision. And he said something that was so powerful. I'll never forget this. And somebody maybe needs to hear this right now. He said, Jordan, you can't make the right decision or the wrong decision. You can only make the best decision with the information you have available. What you do after you make the decision will determine if it was the right decision. And it was like the most liberating thing. He's basically saying like, hey man, God's will for your life is dynamic. It's not like there's like path A, path B, like don't screw it up, Yeah. Like whatever we decided, we were going to figure it out, and we're still figuring it out. But there's some young person out there that wants to be an entrepreneur. And what I would say is like, build the plane as you fly it. Like just get that bad boy up in the air, and parts are going to fall off, and then you're going to lose a wheel and you're going to run into some bumpy weather. But as long as you don't completely crash, which I think very few people do. And even if, whatever crashing means to you, if the business crashes, you'll build another one, like whatever. I just think it's about, messy action, build the plane as you fly it, try things out, and just remember that you'll never stop trying to figure it out. Even when you look at somebody like, wow, they've got it totally figured out. Like there's all kinds of parts of their business they're still trying to mold and hold together. And that's been true for us, for sure.
Yeah, that's so refreshing to hear from me. And I can only imagine what it is for the listeners too, just to hear that, because there is that silent pressure of getting it all figured out and knowing your path. And really it's been more embracing the journey, right? As you have to embrace every chapter, and also not compare your chapter 1 or 2 to somebody else's chapter 15.
Yeah,
the second you start doing that, then you're toast. And you're just like in this constant, it's like, I feel like sometimes we forget, especially maybe as entrepreneurs and visionaries, is like, sometimes we forget that each day is a gift, and tomorrow, like you said before, is not guaranteed. So like, if you're just grind every single day, all day, and you're worried about like, oh my gosh, I should be so much further along than I am now, then like, that was just a wasted day. So
true.
I think there's a lot of different parts in your life that you balance. And I don't know, I kind of have thrown the work-life balance thing kind of out the window a little bit, but mine's more like, hey, how can I have fun today, but also live in my purpose and my calling? And so for you personally, like, what does that look like for you? How do you, I'll say work-life balance, because that's kind of what I feel like a lot of the world knows it as, but how do you keep that healthy balance, so to speak, between your purpose, your career, but then also like loving on your family and like enjoying life, like legitimately having fun and being present?
Yeah, I think I've stopped focusing on like the balance thing, because I think my life is just kind of always out of balance. And I've started to focus more on just being fully present. Like I just want to be present, whatever it is that I'm doing. So I think it's also accepting like, so right now, like I'm having this conversation with you and I'm fully present. Like we're having a conversation. It's meaningful. It's an honor to be on your show. Like I want to be present in this conversation. And it's okay for me to accept the fact that like right now, my relationship with my daughters is not flourishing because I'm on this show. Like this is part of my work. It's part of our brand. It's part of the way that we provide for our family. And that's okay. Right. And in the same way, if I'm rolling around on the floor with my kids, my business is not flourishing in that moment. Right. And that's okay. So I just want to be fully present. And I think if I'm worried about balance, like if I constantly want things to be balanced, I'll struggle with being present. Because when I'm with my kids, I'm thinking about business. Or when I'm with Tori, I'm thinking about my kids. And that leads to a life where you're showing up and you're not fully focused on the present moment. And so I don't know, Tori, I feel like some days I do really great with my family and other days we kill it in business. And I've just got to learn to be okay with, hey, there's some days where you're going to be more overweighted, but when you can and where you can, make sure that you're fully present in the moment with the people that you're with. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I 100%. I couldn't agree more with the throwing the balance out the window because I don't think there is such a thing. And when you are present exactly where your feet are and where you are every single moment, I mean, man, it's so much, but it's a struggle too. Like being real, it is a struggle too, especially when you're like a very ambitious, like high achiever and you love what you do at the same time. It's like, all right, the other night at date night with my boyfriend, we like put our phone, he's an entrepreneur as well. So we put our phones away, we put them on silent, and we made a commitment to ourselves that we are not talking about business the whole date night. Because you sometimes get so lost when especially when you're both, entrepreneurs and visionaries and stuff where, oh my gosh, you like have to make an effort to be like, all right, we're not talking about business tonight. We're going to talk about something else.
Can totally relate. That's so true. Yeah. Ashton and I struggle because, being business partners, we're in the same boat where we have to be really intentional about putting that down. So I feel you on that big time. The last thing I'd say about that too, Tori, is I think being okay with the fact that there's certain seasons where you're going to do more of one thing than the other, like I love around the holidays, like Christmas time, like our business slows down and there's not a lot of people doing like coaching calls between Christmas and New Year's. So it's a season where like I just get more time with our kids and more time with my wife, and our business like kind of takes, a way back seat. Mm-hmm. But then like the year kicks off and January, February, as is a really big time for speaking. Yeah. And so I have to be okay in that season of like, okay, right now I'm going to travel more. I'm going to be a little bit busier. And that's just the season that I'm in. So I think it's also just being okay with it. Hey, there's some seasons where your business is going to demand more time or you're going to move more in that direction. And then there's other seasons where it's like, you're going to get more family time. Yeah. So I think I've had to do a better job of accepting that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a super good point. And I just, your perspective is awesome. Like nothing has changed really since I've seen you like away, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe a little bit's changed, but you're still
a little bit of the pride and ego, probably a little bit of that. It's still there, by the way. I'm still working on it.
Right. So hey, I mean, I struggled with that when it came to Miss Missouri. My whole identity got wrapped up in, being that person. And then it was like, wait, then to start, there's something to be said, like when you, like, I felt like I made it to the top of the pageant industry because I was at Miss USA. So I was like, okay, I worked my butt off for about 8-9 years to get to Miss USA. But then, so like, I got to the top, quote unquote, in my head of that industry. But then I didn't win Miss USA. So it's like, whoo, all right, what do you do? What do you do now? And that's when you're like, oh crap. Like as much as I focused on like my career and my purpose and my identity, not getting wrapped up in that thing, it still did. Oh wait. And then also so did my ego. It went along with it.
Yeah. Well, you're in such a unique position to speak to, especially young women, right? Because you've experienced the highest of highs on that in that way and in that platform. Right. And so I think to be able to be real with people, and I know that's a huge part of what you've committed yourself to and committed your work to. Like, I just want to encourage you. That's like super powerful work that more people need to hear, especially coming from somebody like you who's who's been at those levels and has experienced, extreme amounts of success. So keep doing it. Proud of you.
You know what's interesting though is a lot of the external validations that you get that people again don't know what you're struggling with on the inside, right? So like when you were with, during that time with Northwestern and then your career, and it was at like this peak, whereas like you were getting all this external validation being thrown at you, and like, oh my gosh, and like fame and like recognition, and you were the best of the best, and like everybody was feeding your ego, and then it's like, it's similar, right? And it happens and you work with sports professionals now too. And I always think of, that's what happens with athletes and business professionals. And that's to like get your ego fed everything externally. But what some people don't know is what you're struggling with internally when you're going back home. And for me, my relationship was an absolute disaster and in a mess. And I was crying every single day. But on the outside, I was wearing a crown on my head. And that's just that industry. But same goes for yours. And I think that's what's really, really inspiring about you is that, your life does look amazing. It is amazing. You've been extremely blessed, but then also like being real, like there's still challenges and struggles that go on behind doors that nobody, always sees. And so you're just a breath of fresh air, honestly, to chat with. And I just love to see where your career is going, what you've done, what you continue to do. And it's just been super cool reconnecting with you, and you're just super inspirational, man. And I can't wait to just continue to cheer you on and see you on the biggest stages. And I just want you to tell the audience here, like, what's Jordan up to this year? Like, where are you headed with your business? Is it speaking, mentoring, coaching? What's a huge win for you that we can look for Jordan Montgomery to be on?
Yeah. Well, hey, first off, right back at you, cheering for you always. So thrilled for your success. And I know it's just going to continue to grow and evolve. For us, we just started working on a book. So very early stages of putting out a book, which is exciting. And we just want to continue to grow our podcast, coaching business, keynote speaking continues to be a big part of our world. But I think what I'm focused on right now in this season is relationships. And I've been challenged in, my leadership journey just to go deeper with fewer. I think I've always been somebody that's kept a really, maybe too many friends at times. And then sometimes when you do that, you sort of miss the depth, the deep friendship. And so just getting back to pouring into and investing into some people that I really care about on the personal side. Now on the professional side, I hope those other things continue to grow and evolve. So we've got some big speaking gigs coming up that I'm excited about on the professional front, but just trying to take it one day at a time, and enjoying the journey. So yeah, thanks for the question. And thank you for this time. This has been so fun reconnecting with you. And a lot of times when you podcast, you're on with somebody that you don't really know or you barely know. And it's fun to like be able to podcast with somebody that I've technically known for a long time. And so this has been a joy. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It is. It's so fun to just reconnect. And, like I said at the get-go, I mean, it's an Iowa Hawkeye fan on the other line here, guys. So,
right.
It's a good one. But no, it is. It's super fun to reconnect friendships. And like I said, always cheering for you, man. And super grateful for your time today. And thanks for coming on. I know it took a little bit to get this scheduled between our two schedules. And I'm just super grateful for this time. So thank you again, Jordan.
Hey, right back at you. Keep shining, keep leading. Thanks so much for having me. You're awesome.